The crack of a pistol shot through the air, silencing the crowded saloon as Katherine Allen stood frozen, blood dripping from a gash on her cheek where Sheriff Denton's pistol butt had grazed her. Her father lay slumped over the poker table, his lifeless eyes staring at nothing, while the sheriff calmly holstered his weapon and produced a document from his vest pocket. "Your father died owing me $5,000, Sheriff Denton announced, his voice cutting through the shocked silence of Rattlesnake Gulch, Nevada, circa 1878. "But I'm willing to forgive the debt, Miss Allen, in exchange for your hand in marriage. I've drawn up the contract already." Katherine's hands trembled as she backed away. At 22, she never imagined becoming a widow before she was even a bride. Her father had gambled away everything, their ranch, their savings, and now, it seemed, her future. "You have until sundown tomorrow to decide," Sheriff Denton continued, sliding the contract across the table. "Though I reckon your options are mighty limited now." As the saloon patrons averted their eyes, a man stood from the corner table. Tall and broad-shouldered with sun-weathered skin, Flynn Harrington approached with deliberate steps, his spurs jingling against the wooden floor. "The lady ain't marrying you, Denton," Flynn said, his voice low but carrying through the room. "Not while I can speak." The sheriff's hand hovered near his pistol. "This ain't your business, Cowboy. I'm making it my business." Flynn positioned himself between Katherine and the sheriff. "Miss Allen deserves to bury her father properly before you start waving papers in her face." Katherine had seen Flynn around town for months, delivering cattle to the railway station, occasionally tipping his hat to her as they passed on the street. Now, standing before her with unwavering resolve, he seemed different, more substantial somehow. "You best be careful, Harrington," Sheriff Denton warned. "I'm the law in this town." Flynn didn't flinch. "Then act like it." Several tense seconds passed before the sheriff adjusted his hat and stepped back. "Fine. You've got 3 days, Miss Allen. Then I'll be expecting your signature on that contract." He nodded toward the document on the table. "Unless you prefer debtor's prison." After the sheriff departed, Katherine collapsed into a chair, her body racked with sobs. Flynn crouched beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "Miss Allen," he said gently, "I know we ain't properly acquainted, but I can't stand by while Denton forces your hand like this." Katherine wiped her tears with a handkerchief. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." "I know enough," Flynn replied. "Your father was a drunk and a gambler, but you've worked honest at the general store since you were 18. Never complained, never asked for charity." He paused. "And I know Denton's been watching you for months, waiting for your father to slip up so he could get his hands on you." "What can I do?" Katherine whispered. "The sheriff runs this town. No one dares stand against him." Flynn's eyes hardened with determination. "I've got a small spread about 20 miles north. It ain't much, but it's paid for. If you'll trust me, I can get you there tonight." Katherine looked at her father's body. "I can't just leave him." "We'll make arrangements," Flynn promised. "But first, we need to get you somewhere safe." 2 hours later, Katherine found herself riding beside Flynn Harrington, heading north through the moonlit desert. Her father's body had been taken to the undertaker with instructions for burial, paid for from Flynn's own pocket. She had only the clothes on her back and her mother's locket around her neck. "Sheriff Denton will come after us," she said, breaking the long silence. Flynn nodded grimly. "I'm counting on it. But he'll have to find us first." As they rode through the night, Katherine studied Flynn's profile. His jaw was strong, his eyes alert as they scanned the horizon. "Why are you really helping me, Mr. Harrington?" Flynn was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. 2 years ago, my sister found herself in a similar situation in Colorado. A powerful man decided he wanted her, and the law looked the other way." His voice grew tight. "She took her own life rather than submit. I wasn't there to help her then. I won't make that mistake again." Katherine felt a chill that had nothing to do with the desert night. "I'm sorry about your sister." "Vengeance won't bring her back," Flynn said softly. But maybe helping you will set something right. They arrived at Flynn's ranch just before dawn. It was modest but well kept, a small wooden house, a barn, and a corral with several horses. Beyond the structures stretched acres of grazing land. It's not much, Flynn said as he helped her down from her horse. But it's yours for as long as you need it. I'll sleep in the barn. Katherine looked around at the peaceful homestead. I can't impose on you like this. You're not imposing. I'm offering. He tipped his hat and turned toward the barn. Mr. Harrington, she called after him. Thank you. He paused, looking back at her with a gentle expression that softened his weathered features. Flynn. Call me Flynn. Over the next 2 days, Katherine found a strange comfort in the routine of ranch life. Flynn taught her to feed the chickens and collect eggs, showed her how to work the pump for fresh water, and gave her space to grieve her father. On the morning of the 3rd day, as they sat on the porch drinking coffee, Flynn spoke the words they'd both been avoiding. Denton will be looking for you by now. Katherine stared into her cup. What do we do? We've got 2 choices, Flynn said. We can run head for California or up to Oregon. Or we can face him. Running feels like admitting guilt, Katherine said, surprising herself with her resolve. And this is your home. I won't be the reason you lose it. Flynn studied her with newfound respect. Then we face him. But we'll need help. That afternoon, Flynn rode to the neighboring ranch, returning with his friend Caleb Johnson, a former Texas Ranger who'd settled in the area the previous year. Denton's been running Rattlesnake Gulch like his personal kingdom for too long, Caleb said after Flynn explained the situation. Folks have been too scared to stand against him, but if we can prove he's been extorting debts and forcing folks into contracts, we might be able to get the federal marshal involved. How do we prove it? Katherine asked. Caleb leaned forward. Your father's debt, did you ever see any loan papers? Katherine shook her head. No, but my father gambled constantly. He could have lost that much. Or Denton could be lying, Flynn suggested. Your father ever mention owing the sheriff money? No, Katherine realized. He complained about everyone he owed, but never mentioned the sheriff. Flynn and Caleb exchanged looks. We need to get back to town and look through your father's things, Flynn said. If there's no record of this debt, Denton has no claim on you. He'll kill you if you go back, Katherine protested. He'll try, Caleb said grimly. But 2 against 1 makes for better odds. Flynn shook his head. 3 against 1. I can't ask you to risk your lives, Katherine said. You didn't ask, Flynn replied simply. The next morning, they set out for Rattlesnake Gulch, taking a roundabout trail to avoid being spotted. They reached the edge of town at dusk, tethering their horses in a grove of cottonwoods. We'll go to your father's house first, Flynn whispered as they crouched in the shadows. If Denton's men are watching it, we'll need to create a distraction. They moved silently through the back alleys until they reached the small house where Katherine had lived with her father. A deputy sat on the front porch, lazily smoking a cigarette. Caleb disappeared into the darkness. Minutes later, shouts erupted from the direction of the saloon, followed by the sound of breaking glass. The deputy jumped to his feet and hurried toward the commotion. No, Flynn urged, leading Katherine to the back door. Inside, the house was exactly as she'd left it 3 days earlier. Katherine headed straight for her father's desk, rifling through papers while Flynn kept watch. Nothing about a debt to Denton, she whispered after searching every drawer. But there is this. She held up a deed. It says our ranch was sold to J.T. Wilson 6 months ago. But my father never mentioned selling it. Flynn examined the document. This signature doesn't match the one on your father's burial authorization. He was forging documents, Katherine realized. Creating false debts. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. Flynn drew his pistol just as Sheriff Denton stepped into the room, his own weapon already raised. I had a feeling you might come back, Denton drawled. Drop the gun, Harrington. Flynn slowly placed his pistol on the floor. We know what you've been doing, Denton. Forging documents, creating false debts, forcing people into giving up their property. Clever. The sheriff admitted with a cold smile. But it's your word against mine. And I'm the law. Not anymore. Came Caleb's voice from behind him. The former ranger stood in the doorway, his shotgun aimed at Denton's back. Drop it, Sheriff. Denton's face contorted with rage, but he lowered his weapon. You're making a mistake. I run this town. Not anymore. Katherine repeated, holding up the forged deed. We're taking this to the federal marshal in Carson City. Along with statements from everyone you've swindled. You think people will talk? Denton laughed. They're too afraid. Not when they know you're finished, Flynn said. They tied Denton securely and left him under Caleb's watch while Flynn and Katherine went to find the telegraph operator. By morning, a federal marshal was on his way from Carson City, and several townspeople, emboldened by Denton's capture, had come forward with their own stories of extortion and threats. As they waited for the marshal's arrival, Katherine and Flynn sat on the steps of the small church at the edge of town. What will you do now? Flynn asked. Katherine looked out over the town that had been her home her entire life. I don't know. My father's debts were real enough, even if Denton's claims weren't. Once everything's settled, I'll probably have to sell what little we have left and find work somewhere. Flynn cleared his throat. You could stay. At my ranch, I mean. Katherine turned to him, surprised. Not as a charity case, he added quickly. The place needs a woman's touch, and I could use the help. He looked down at his hands. I'm not proposing marriage or anything improper. You'd have the house to yourself. I'd keep to the barn until you decide what you want. Why would you do that? Flynn finally met her eyes. Because in 3 days you've shown more courage than most men I know. Because you deserve a chance to decide your own future. And because... He hesitated. I'd like the chance to know you better. Properly. Katherine felt warmth spread through her chest. I think I'd like that too. 3 months passed. The federal marshal had arrested Sheriff Denton, and investigations revealed a web of corruption that reached all the way to the county judge. Katherine had settled into life at Flynn's ranch, keeping house during the day while he worked the cattle, sharing meals and conversation in the evenings. One afternoon, as summer turned to autumn, Flynn returned from town with supplies and a letter. It's from the federal court, he said, handing it to her. About your father's estate. Katherine opened it with trembling fingers. As she read, her eyes widened. The court has ruled that all transactions made under Denton's authority are to be reviewed. The sale of our ranch was invalidated. She looked up, stunned. They're returning the property to me, along with compensation for lost income. Flynn smiled warmly. That's wonderful news, Katherine. Her heart sank slightly. I suppose I'll be moving back to my father's ranch then. Flynn's smile faltered. Of course. It's your home. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Katherine gathered her courage. Flynn, these past months have been... I've never felt so safe, so respected. He nodded, his eyes on the horizon. I've enjoyed having you here. I don't want to leave, she admitted softly. Flynn turned to her, hope lighting his features. You don't have to. But the ranch, we could sell it, he suggested. Or keep it and expand our grazing land. Or whatever you want. Katherine moved closer to him on the porch swing. What I want is to stay here. With you. Flynn took her hand gently in his. Katherine, I haven't wanted to press you or take advantage of your situation. But I've grown to care for you more than I thought possible. I care for you too, she whispered. I'm not a wealthy man, he said. But I promise you'll never want for anything I can provide. And I'll never ask you to be anything other than who you are. Katherine leaned forward and placed a gentle kiss on his cheek. That's more than enough. 2 weeks later, they were married in the same small church where they had sat months before. Caleb stood as Flynn's best man, and several townspeople attended those who had stood with them against Denton and had come to respect the quiet Cowboy, and the brave woman who had helped bring justice to Rattlesnake Gulch. As winter settled over the Nevada desert, Katherine and Flynn found warmth in their growing love and the home they were building together. The profits from selling her father's ranch allowed them to expand Flynn's property, adding more cattle and improving the house. By spring, Katherine had turned the small ranch into a true home. She'd planted a vegetable garden, added curtains to the windows, and filled the once sparse rooms with comfort and warmth. Flynn watched her transformation from a frightened young woman to a confident rancher's wife with undisguised admiration. "I never thought I could be this happy," he confessed one evening as they sat by the fire. "After my sister died, I thought I'd spend my life alone." Katherine took his hand. "We found each other when we needed it most." In the summer of 1879, almost a year after they had first fled Rattlesnake Gulch together, Katherine shared news that brought tears to Flynn's eyes. "A baby?" he whispered, placing his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "Are you certain?" "The doctor confirmed it yesterday when I was in town," she said, beaming. "We're going to have a family, Flynn." He gathered her in his arms, his heart overflowing with love for this woman who had brought such unexpected joy to his life. "I promise you both a good life, Katherine. Everything I have is yours." "We already have everything we need," she assured him. As autumn painted the landscape in golds and reds, word reached them that former Sheriff Denton had been sentenced to 15 years in a federal prison. The news brought a sense of closure, allowing them to look forward without shadows from the past. In February 1880, during a fierce winter storm, Katherine gave birth to a healthy boy they named William, after Flynn's father. Caleb Johnson, who had become a dear friend, rode through the blizzard to fetch the doctor, arriving just in time. "He has your eyes," Flynn whispered as he held his son for the first time, marveling at the tiny fingers that curled around his own. "And your stubborn chin," Katherine teased weakly from the bed. As William grew, so did their ranch and their happiness. By his second birthday, he was toddling after Flynn as he did his chores, a miniature cowboy hat perched on his blond head. In the spring of 1883, their family expanded again with the birth of their daughter, Emma. Flynn, now an experienced father, paced anxiously outside the bedroom during the delivery, but entered with tears of joy when he heard his daughter's first cry. "She's perfect," he whispered, cradling the tiny bundle while 4-year-old William peered curiously at his new sister. "Our family is complete," Katherine said contentedly. The years flowed by like the seasons, each bringing new joys and challenges. The ranch prospered under their joint care. Flynn's fair dealings with neighboring ranchers and the railroad earned him a reputation for honesty, while Katherine's smart investments of their savings helped them weather the inevitable dry seasons and market fluctuations. By 1890, Rattlesnake Gulch had grown into a proper town, renamed New Hope at the suggestion of its citizens. Flynn was asked to serve on the town council, a position he accepted with characteristic humility. "They want you to run for mayor next year," Katherine told him one evening as they sat on the same porch swing where they had first confessed their feelings, now worn smooth from years of use. Flynn chuckled. "Can you imagine? The quiet cowboy who barely spoke to anyone, leading the town?" Katherine squeezed his hand. "I can imagine it perfectly. You've always led with your heart, Flynn. That's what this town needs." He studied her face, still beautiful to him after 12 years of marriage. The young woman forced into a marriage contract had become a confident, respected ranch wife and mother, her spirit unbowed by the hardships they had faced together. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked suddenly. "Coming with me that night? Choosing this life?" Katherine leaned against his shoulder. "Not for a single moment. You gave me a choice when no one else would. Everything good in my life came from that one act of courage." Flynn kissed the top of her head. "It was you who had the courage, Katherine. I just had the good sense to recognize it." In the summer of 1893, they celebrated 15 years together with a party that brought friends from miles around. William, now 13, tall and serious like his father, helped serve the guests. Emma, 10 years old with her mother's spirit and determination, entertained everyone with her piano playing. As the sun set and lanterns illuminated the yard, Flynn pulled Katherine away from the crowd for a quiet moment alone. "I have something for you," he said, presenting her with a small velvet box. Inside was a delicate gold locket, similar to her mother's that she still wore but had grown tarnished with age. "Open it," Flynn urged. Inside were tiny portraits, Flynn on one side, William and Emma on the other. "So you'll always have us close to your heart," he explained. "Just as you've always been close to ours." Tears filled Katherine's eyes as Flynn fastened the new locket around her neck. "It's perfect. Just like the woman wearing it," he said, drawing her into his arms. As they swayed together under the stars, Katherine reflected on the journey that had brought them here, from a terrified young woman fleeing a forced marriage to a confident wife and mother, secure in her husband's love and respect. "Do you remember what you said to Sheriff Denton that first night?" she asked softly. Flynn smiled against her hair. "That you weren't marrying him, not while I could speak." "Yes," Katherine said, leaning back to look into his eyes. "Those words changed everything. You gave me a voice when I had none. And you gave me a reason to use mine," Flynn replied. "For 15 years, you've made me a better man than I ever thought I could be." As their guests celebrated around them and their children played nearby, Flynn and Katherine shared a kiss that held all the passion and tenderness of their years together, a love born from courage and respect, tempered by hardship, and made stronger by the life they had built together in the wild Nevada desert. "I love you, Flynn Harrington," Katherine whispered against his lips. "Yesterday, today, and all our tomorrows." "And I love you, Katherine Harrington," he answered, his voice thick with emotion. "The woman who taught me that speaking up for what's right can lead to more happiness than a man deserves in one lifetime." As night fell over their ranch, the stars shone down on a love that had defied a corrupt sheriff, overcome hardship, and blossomed into a legacy of strength and tenderness that would endure for generations to come.